it's been a hot minute since we've gotten to chat, so I'm so glad to be able to just get to spend some time with you. So, um, like Kat says, I just want to thank you for giving me your Saturday morning and just spending this time getting to talk about this amazing hormone, because that's what I want to do today. Because ultimately, LifeVantage, our differentiation is activation. And activation, as we've all can probably chant in our sleep by now, is take it to make it. And so what is incredibly important about this launch is what we're making, which is this amazing hormone. And there's lots of perceptions about it, but what I want to do is just talk through all of the things that this hormone touches and just kind of some basic information, because that's going to prep you as you get ready for this launch and as you cast your net wide to share this opportunity with people. My goal with this is to show you how GLP-1 is a longevity target. So I think right now there's a big perception of GLP-1 just as a weight loss target, and that's media. There's lots of things out there for it and we've seen with the drugs. But what I want to talk about today is why it's a longevity target. So let me go ahead and share my screen and then we'll jump right in. Okay, getting some nice MB colors. We're getting you already in the color palette so you can be feeling the excitement. Add in some lavenders too later on. Okay, so first I want to start with what is GLP-1. And I know this is very basic. I know you guys have been talking about this. You've had this product on My US for a while. You've been talking about GLP-1, but I just want to start right at the beginning of what is GLP-1. And that actually begins with a more important question of what is a hormone, because that's what this target is. It's a hormone, and it's different than other things that we've targeted in the past. So hormones, they're chemical substances, they're produced in the body, and they're going to regulate and control different physiological processes. They're secreted into the bloodstream, and they're going to travel to where they need to go, those target organs and tissues, and they have lots of different effects. They influence growth, metabolism, mood, reproduction, immune function, and a host of other bodily functions. And that's why they're such an incredible target, because they have such an influence body-wide. And so what I want you to think of is they have a myriad of functions, and that's what you're going to see with GLP-1. So they are messengers. They're coordinating and maintaining balance within the body. And as we continue to talk about what activation is and that take it to make it story, it always comes back to balance. In the past, we were talking a little bit more about flipping on switches, but in recent days, we've been talking about it's more like a soundboard where you're dialing in, because it's all about coming to your balance. Because if things were flipped off, you'd be dead. If they were flipped on all the time, we would all have cancer or be dead. So there is that fine balance that we have. And that's what activation is. It's going to the root to bring back that balance. So then, examples of hormones that you're all familiar with: insulin, regulation of blood sugar; adrenaline, the working on that fight or flight response; estrogen, involved in different reproductive functions; thyroid, which a lot of people deal with, involved in metabolism. And then we have GLP-1, which also fits into this broad hormone category and is just as important as any of these other ones that we are incredibly familiar with. And honestly, we should have been as familiar with GLP-1 prior to the drugs. It just never had its time in the sun until the drugs came. So let's go a little bit more into what is specifically GLP-1, and this is where you'll see my eyes light up, because we have a diagram that explains genetic processes, and we'll walk through it a little bit. This is not a need to know to be able to understand what GLP-1 does. This is just fun, and in case you want to have a little bit of nerdiness. So if anything goes over your head, or you don't feel like you need to remember this is just for me. I'm just sharing a little bit of my heart with you. So GLP-1 stands for the glucagon-like peptide 1. What's key about this hormone is where it's produced. It's produced in L cells that are in the gut, specifically in the colon, which was incredibly important as we were looking at formulating products to address this target, because if we didn't address where it was found, then we weren't going to be able to influence it. And so before we go into the other physiological processes, let's go into this fun little diagram over here. So you see where it's located. colon, we have these L cells. In the L cells is where GLP-1 is secreted. Now, there is no gene that activates GLP-1s. You can't activate a GLP-1 gene. I actually saw a company that was like, activates GLP-1 gene by 250%. And I'm like, what are you activating? Because GLP-1 actually is a peptide that is cleaved from a larger peptide. So you have proglucagon, which is this peptide here that's made up of lots of smaller peptides. It is encoded for by this GCG gene. So that would be your gene that you're influencing to create more proglucagon. Proglucagon then has to be cleaved into active peptides. And there's an enzyme PC1-3 that does that. And then you have your active peptides. You have your GLP-1, GLP-2, and you see the other host of peptides. There is no active GLP-1 until this process has occurred. So if you just have proglucagon in your body and you're not having it cleaved, you're not having active GLP-1. Then that GLP-1, once it's floating around your body, it's not going to do any good until it finds its receptor. Receptors are found throughout the body. They're in your brain. They're in different organs. And so GLP-1 benefits will come when there is that binding of the receptors. However, there is a natural regulation that's within the body. We have our dipeptidase 4, DPP4, and it breaks down GLP-1. Now, if everything was perfectly in balance in your system, then you're going to have enough GLP-1. It's going to be regulated by the DPP4, and then you're going to have balanced GLP-1 levels. The joy is our bodies are never perfectly in balance because of the world we live in, different factors, quality of our food, age, environment, stress. And so we see GLP-1 levels go down, we see GLP-1 receptors go down, and we see the enzymes go up. And so our levels are out of balance. And so when you have too much of the enzyme DPP4, you're breaking down that GLP-1 before it is able to find its receptor. And if you have less receptors, then you're going to have less activity. So all pieces of this pathway are incredibly important. And as more and more information becomes available, you'll see how we were targeting all the different pieces of this pathway because it is all necessary to have a holistic GLP-1 response and have that actually secreted from L cells. Now, you have L cells are secreting GLP-1. The GLP-1 is involved in processes like regulation of insulin secretion, inhibition of glucagon release, thinking lowering blood sugar. It's going to help support insulin sensitivity, slow that gastric emptying so that you're able to stay fuller longer and kind of balance that whole process, and then maintaining energy homeostasis. So what you don't see on there, and it's there for a reason, is that one of the roles of GLP-1 is not weight loss. So when you hear it be called the weight loss hormone, not correct, because this is what it does. Now, it plays a role in weight, but it is not a weight loss hormone that if you magically turn it on, you're going to lose weight. We'll talk more about that. Okay, let's continue on. How it's activated. So this is that process. You're going to eat. If you have food, especially that if it contains carbs, you're going to have the nutrients that are going to be absorbed in the intestines. The L cells are going to release GLP-1 into the bloodstream. GLP-1 is going to travel through the bloodstream. It's going to go to the pancreas, stimulation of insulin secretion, and that's going to be in response to glucose. And so GLP-1 will increase insulin release only when blood glucose is elevated. This is just how the normal process goes. It's going to also inhibit glucagon release from alpha cells in your pancreas, which is going to signal the liver to release stored glucose, but GLP-1 will prevent this to help lower blood sugar levels. All a cycle to keep everything in balance. Like we talked about, it's going to help slow the rate at which the stomach empties its contents into the small intestines. That's going to help you stay fuller longer and can help reduce those spikes and keep you more in balance. So as it does this, it's going to help maintain that balanced blood glucose level after meals. So that's the ideal, is that you're not having these wild and crazy spikes. You're able to control your satiety and not be controlled by your cravings, and actually eat to nourish your body. That's the goal of this. You need food, you need nutrients, but you need to get your body craving the correct things. And so when you have everything in balance, you're not having these crazy spikes, your body will begin to crave what it actually needs. and that's can help facilitate change. Okay, GLP-1 is activated, now what? Because if you listen to a lot of things, then you're going to magically lose 50 pounds that it's activated. But there's a lot more that happens with this. So first, I want to go into some reality check with the hormone that I've already mentioned. Not a magical weight loss hormone, being completely upfront and blunt with this. You're going to run into people who think this, and it's because they've seen celebrities on the drugs losing massive amounts of weight. They've seen the clinicals. What they're not realizing from the clinicals that have been done, even on these agonists, is that they all were involving lifestyle change, and they actually had nutrition coaches that talked to all the participants in the study that aided them along their journey. It wasn't this magical thing that you flooded your body with and you suddenly lost a ton of weight. There were a lot of pieces to it. Going to the drug, not everyone loses weight. It is a high percentage because of how it works. You're flooding the body with synthetic version of this hormone that'll bind into those receptors. It stays active in your body longer. Normal GLP-1 active for a couple of minutes. This synthetic GLP-1 drug in your body for up to a week, especially semaglutide. It's been modified for that. And so you are going to be overcoming a lot of your body's systems and really forcing lifestyle change by making it uncomfortable to eat, making yourself sick, and having a lot of issues. There's a lot of benefits to the drugs. That's why they were developed. They were developed for this insulin regulation. But for people that are looking for weight loss, it's a very harsh way, especially if it's only a little bit, for them to approach it, because it's really overhauling, like I said, what your body does. Now, looking at that population, there's 20 to 30% of participants in the studies who did not experience significant or any weight loss change at all. So it doesn't work for everyone. And some will even have gained weight with it. So not a magical, if you just add this to your body, it's not going to automatically equal weight loss. There's also within that 20 to 30% certain populations that it ends up being less effective for. People that have mutations in GLP-1R, which are the receptor genes, so their receptors are less sensitive. People with certain medical conditions and hormonal fluxes can also make it very hard as well, or at least make it a little bit more challenging. Now there's the lifestyle change required that I mentioned. It's going to help you with your appetite and your satiety, but you still need that proper macro and micronutrient intake. You need to be able to fuel your body to make this work. One of the things that's really interesting to me is GLP-1 is not working alone. I think, once again, it's the buzzword of the day. So everyone's thinking, okay, GLP-1 only, but it's working within a complex system of different hormones and neuropeptides. And so there needs to be a balanced response from all of these, and that will regulate food intake, glucose metabolism, fat storage, etc. So if anything's out of balance, so insulin resistance, leptin resistance, etc., you're going to have some loss in efficacy there. So it's all the factors that need to be combined. Your gut is incredibly important for GLP-1 because if you have an imbalanced microbiome, it can disrupt the function. You can then have lowered effects. They see that with the agonist, and they see that just with the hormone in general. It can also lead to intestinal dysbiosis. So that's that imbalance in gut microbiome and gut bacteria, and it disrupts GLP-1 production and release. So if you have a disrupted gut microbiome and you're trying to just tackle GLP-1 alone, you're going to see slower results. So you need to optimize all of these systems. So once again, it's not just a magical hormone. Everything comes together because your body is complex and everything works together in harmony through complex systems. I also want to mention, not everyone who has weight to lose, it's because they have imbalanced GLP-1. There's other things that come into play: genetics, hormonal imbalances, age, sleep, stress, medications, environmental factors. There's a lot of things, and GLP-1 just may not be the answer for everyone, and that's okay. There's still benefits to activating this hormone, but it may not be the solution specifically for weight loss. And then there also are mutations in genes that can reduce GLP-1 efficacy. So all of this just to be really upfront. If you're going out the gate saying, if we activate this hormone, it's going to be this easy button that you can push, that's not how health works. And if that was the way that health worked, then a lot of people would be out of jobs because we could just hit those easy buttons. and everyone would be healthy. So it's much more complex than that. And that needs to be part of the discussion and expectation setting up front. So with that out of the way, now we get to talk about some really cool stuff, because GLP-1 influences lots of different systems throughout your body. So I want to, and we've kind of mentioned them before on some trainings. They've been maybe like 2 bullet points of, and it also does this and this and this, and we've kind of moved on. What I'm going to do is dig into each of these areas one by one, and they each get their own slide so we can dive in a little bit deeper, because this lets you know why everyone needs balanced GLP-1 levels for longevity and for long-term health. So let's continue on. So first is the obvious, blood sugar and insulin. It's going to enhance the insulin release from the pancreas in response to glucose intake. Blood sugar levels rise, GLP-1 signals the pancreas to release insulin. That's going to help lower it. It keeps it all in balance. We've talked about this. We've talked about the emptying of food from the stomach. So that's going to slow down the absorption of glucose and prevent those sharp spikes. We've talked about that. It's going to help your body cells respond better to insulin so they can be more efficient in taking up glucose from the blood. So that can help with lowering blood sugar levels and reducing insulin resistance, and which plays a huge role in type 2 diabetes. So there's a lot that GLP-1 does. This is its primary function, but that's not all. GLP-1 impacts the gut, because as you slow down the rate that food leaves the stomach, it alters the gut environment, and it can make it more beneficial for beneficial bacteria to thrive. It's going to allow for more nutrient absorption, and so you can have better microbial fermentation in the intestines. So ultimately, by helping your system work the way it's supposed to, you're helping your gut microbiome be restored to what it should be. It's going to also help regulate the secretion of digestive enzymes. So that's through the pancreas. You're going to enhance that process of digestion. So that's how, when the nutrients you put in your body, that's going to help you break them down and facilitate their absorption into the intestines. It also helps promote anti-inflammatory responses. So that's going to help you with the integrity of your intestinal lining. So that's going to prevent harmful bacteria and endotoxins from entering the bloodstream, and that will overall help reduce overall widespread inflammation. It's also going to work with all of those gut hormones that I was talking about earlier. So there's ghrelin, leptin, peptide YY, so PYY, pancreatic peptide Y, PPY. Remember those neuropeptides, PYY and PPY. You'll see stuff about them coming up in the future. There's some really cool things with them, and CCK. So if you balance all of these together and everything's working in harmony, you're going to have better digestive health, and then it's going to help control your appetite and, once again, your energy expenditure. Okay, appetite regulation. So it's going to stimulate satiety signals. So it's going to be working that communication between your gut and your brain so that you are able to know when you are full, because a lot of us have become very desensitized to the signals that our bodies send, and we just eat for lots of other reasons, but we aren't necessarily listening to the natural rhythms within our bodies. And GLP-1, when it's in balance, stimulates those satiety signals, which will then reduce food intake if there is an excess, because it's bringing you back to what your body actually needs. It's going to also increase satiety through gastric emptying. Like I mentioned, that gut-brain communication is going to modulate that and strengthen that. Working with the hormones again through the reduction of ghrelin. One of the areas that's incredibly interesting with GLP-1, and there's a lot of research that's coming out around this, are this inhibition of reward pathways. Now, just talking about the hormone itself, they're looking at, okay, it can help with reward pathways for food and for craving, so that high that I get from like eating a piece of chocolate or whatever whatever the thing is that makes me happy as far as food, it can help balance that. But then what they're doing research into is what else gives the body or the brain those reward signals? What are other things that are unhealthy that gives us that high that we could help regulate and bring back into balance? And so there's a whole new world of research. I would keep an eye on PubMed looking at GLP-1 in that area, because that's one where they're expanding quite a bit into. Once again, influencing insulin secretion and then suppression of glucagon, all influencing appetite regulation. The next couple slides are where you start really getting into these long-term benefits. And this is where there's a lot of money being poured in also for research. I think we've been looking at what the drug companies are spending their money on, and that's usually a good sign of where the research is going, because they're not going to spend money if they don't think they're going to get any return for their investment. They see this strong tie between GLP-1. So we already know there's this strong tie, and we'll talk through them, but they know there's even more. So they're generating more and more data, and we're seeing more and more studies come out about the long-term connection between GLP-1 and heart health. Because first, it'll help lower blood pressure, and it can improve blood vessel health so that you have less of that, you get that strength and less permeability, reducing inflammation and oxidative stress. What's interesting about GLP-1 is that there is kind of a nice cyclical relationship with GLP-1 and NRF2, because if you increase GLP-1, you activate more NRF2, which reduces oxidative stress, which increases GLP-1 production. So if you're activating both of those systems in tandem, there's some very natural synergies that occur from that. We also see a tie with GLP-1 balance in prevention of plaque buildup in arteries, healthy heart function and reduction of heart failure risk, and then the connection with weight loss with lifestyle changes and improvement in metabolic health, and then reducing heart attack and stroke risk, and that's through vasodilation. So you're tackling multiple aspects of cardiac health through just this one hormone. Now, obviously, that's just one pathway for cardiac health. There's lots of other things you should be doing, and there's other things that can be activated to help with that. So my team's already being like, oh, what else could we look at? But for this product, this is one mechanism that we can come along and activate and help support this crucial organ. Then we go from the heart to the brain. So we see that supportive brain health. So there's the presence of increased GLP-1 enhances memory, learning, and cognitive function, because that's going to help with enhanced synaptic plasticity. There's a link between that and BDNF, so brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and that is really talking about that ability of the brain to be able to learn and adapt because of plasticity. So when you stop having that, that's when brain health starts kind of taking that nosedive. You want to keep everything flexible and plastic. It helps reduce brain inflammation and oxidative stress through the mechanism that we talked about earlier. And then we're seeing a lot of emerging research about potential benefits with neurodegenerative diseases as well. So another thing to keep your eye out for. So once again, if we're starting now activating this key hormone, what will we see 10 years, 15 years down the road as we've been in balance? Because there's some really scary trends out there as far as where brain health is going. We have a tool that can help tackle that at the source. Once again, not the only tool, but a powerful tool that can be one of the ones in our toolbox. It's also going to help support your mental health by improving mood and motivation, and then regulating brain energy metabolism and preventing insulin resistance. So multi-mechanistic approach to supporting brain health. And that's not all. And so we're not doing a slide for every single organ, but we'll give you like a quick run through of some of the other ones. You have your kidneys, you're going to have protective effects there, especially with those with diabetes and hypertension. Liver, you have reduction of liver fat accumulation and inflammation. You see a great improvement of health and function of the liver. Adipose tissue, that'll help with regulation of fat storage and influencing adiponectin, which will help to regulate fat metabolism. Then also even muscle, so providing energy supply, improving glucose utilization, and promoting muscle preservation, which is kind of interesting because one of the things we know about some of the synthetic options that are out there is that they have really negative effects on muscle preservation. But natural GLP-1 being balanced in your body helps support muscle preservation, which is incredibly interesting. So not only are you having this host of other benefits, you're not doing it to the detriment of your muscles, which once again will promote healthier living longer, because that's such a key factor And when that starts wasting away, you see that influencing multiple aspects of health. And then there's even more. So you can, everything that's on this chart has an influence from GLP-1. So what I kind of want to end with, because I've talked a lot and there's been a lot of information here, is like, because that's a lot of science. There's a lot of things that'll happen in the future, and that's a lot to get people to bet on. But what I want to talk about is what you'll feel when GLP-1 is in balance. So that's where you have those fewer midday crashes because you're not having those spikes in your blood sugar, regulated energy levels tied with that, regulated appetite, so feeling more in control. And that's something that was incredibly impactful for me, looking at activation of GLP-1, that with the cravings and just overall food noise as well, because that's something that's plagued me my entire life. I usually can willpower through it, and to lots of negative effects to my own health when I was younger, but it always was noise that was distracting me from what I actually wanted to do. And what I've noticed as I balance GLP-1, that noise quiets. And I have enough things going on in my brain. I'm a mom. I work here. I'm here. I essentially have a blanket in this office because we have so much going on. I just live here. And I do a bunch of different things. I don't have room in my brain to be thinking about having all this food noise distracting. And that was the most important effect, at least the short-term effect that I felt from this balance. Because it didn't necessarily change too many of my habits because I was making good decisions most of the time, not 100%, but it made it so much easier because it wasn't this constant buzzing in my brain. You see the reduced cravings, the improved cardiovascular health and the ability to walk up and down stairs, reduced inflammation, improved mood and motivation, and then also brain fog and mental clarity. So once again, we got too much stuff to do. We don't have time for any mental fog. We need to be on par. We need to be excelling. We need to be like totally clear. And so this gives us, once again, we have other targets that we've looked at, other products that we have that address other areas that support these, but this gives you a nice complementary benefit so that you can enhance the benefits that you're already experiencing from being activated. Because that's the beauty of activation, is that if you're activating different systems from the source, you are going to see these complementary and synergistic benefits. Instead, that's what I love about what we do, because so many other companies will, I'm launching this product, I'm launching this product, and this one, and we never talk about how they work together, even though they're all going into the same body. Like we never even think about that, but we're always thinking about that. And we're always looking at how they interact and then ultimately how you can have a more positive net benefit, synergistic benefit that comes from all of that. So all of that to say, GLP-1 is a fantastic target. It's a target that everyone needs, a hormone that everyone needs in balance. It has benefits way beyond just what has been advertised on the news or what you see on the internet. It's not the magical weight loss hormone, but it's a perfect, when it's in balance, it gives you the tools that you need to be able to make those changes. And it's going to influence every area of health. And so if you paint this picture, who isn't going to want this? This is something that changes every aspect of your life and applies to everyone. So with that, I hope you learned a few new things about GLP-1 or had some things that are affirmed. And I'll stop sharing my screen.